says because the tzaddikim reach very high levels, right? And it's not just a high level; it's a high level of dealing with a world, that was created with 10 memories. They're able to achieve ruchnius on many, many dargas, but still the value of the reality that allows for such negative behavior, right? But that's only a setup for the tshuva, and that tshuva has even greater value than the tzaddik who is perfecting a world that was created in 10 memories. I think that was the basic tikkun. So it's a general theme, Bechlal and Chassidus. Sometimes it's difficult, to understand, like what did Hashem have in mind? Really, like he's really good. It's like he's going out on such a limb, in a sense. But ultimately, that's the way we explain it. That's the way we explain it. Very often you find, even amongst maybe some, in Jewish sources, although I wouldn't support those sources, that in answer to the question of why does Hashem create evil, right? And often what you will hear from different theologians or whatever, right? Certainly outside of Yiddishkeit, but I've heard it also from within, Yiddishkeit. Although again, I'm going to repeat that I wouldn't support that. That the reason is it's not Hashem, it's not God, it's man, it's man that creates the evil. But that's not an answer for, certainly not for Talmidim of Hasidus, not for those who go in the ways of the Baal Shem Tov, where absolutely everything is by design. Hashem did not leave anything out there, right? So that he says, listen, this is the way I want it to be, but it's up to you. Go ahead, you do it your way. I mean, ultimately, there has to be a deeper purpose even in that, right? So in a sense, he did. He did. Yeah, he allowed us to be like little gods, and he gave us free will. He allowed us to do things that he doesn't even want. I've answered people that, there's the question, can Hashem create a God that he cannot control? So the answer is, yeah, he could. And the proof is, he created me. And in the morning, he wants me to get out of bed, and he can't lift the. No. The question is, can he create a rock that he cannot lift? He said, "Here I am. I'm lying in bed," and he's allowed there to be a reality where Hashem is willingly not being able to lift it. Right? He said, "I can't lift him. You have to lift yourself. I can't do it." Kind of, it's a very deep idea, but I think that's basically what it is. Okay. So, are we waiting for anyone else, or?
Yeah, I think we're ready to start, isn't?
Yeah, is that how you answered the question last week at the Shabbos show?
Not with as much depth and clarity.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's the Nakuda. Okay. It's not an easy Nakuda. It's not an easy Nakuda. The Rebbe would also sometimes express his frustration with these ideas, right? So the Rebbe would he would tap into those ideas, right? But often the Rebbe would but Hashem didn't have to create the world that way. He could have done it another way, right? So it's almost as if the frustration is built into the system. Somehow Hashem wanted that the Rebbe should be sitting at a Farbrengen, and the Rebbe should be, and the Rebbe is literally he's pouring tears out, as to why Hashem decided to create the world in such a manner. I mean, literally, the Rebbe would get very emotional. And by Farbrengens, I've witnessed many times that the Rebbe would literally break down. And usually it was because he was having some issues with Hashem and the way Hashem decides to do things, right? So I guess that's all part of the system. But it's hard. It doesn't have like a straight answer. It's kind of answer, whatever. Okay. So should I continue with the? Okay. So the last year, yeah, Rabbi Yisrael, looks like you're the You're the two Talmidim. You're sitting in front of the class today. So, last time I think I gave the class. It was from the car in the parking lot of Bracha's seminary. I went to pick her up. So I continued with a theme that I had that had begun at a previous show. I don't even remember if it was a week before or 2 weeks before, whatever. My life is becoming very hard to keep track. I literally I have a calendar, and I literally from day to day have to figure out where I am and where I'm going and when I'll be back. But whatever, I was in 3 different countries last week, so or this whatever. So bottom line, so the idea, I mean, I kind of like coined a term of the hidden dimension. Okay, so the Alter Rebbe, for example, the Alter Rebbe speaks about the Ava Misuteres, the hidden love, right? And I was just thinking, this morning, like, what is the mocker? It's if it's hidden, that means that we cannot really put our finger on it. It's not like we can say, "Oh, here, look, this is what this is. Look, see, a Jew has love to Hashem," right? Alter Rebbe calls it the Ava Misuteres. He calls it a hidden love, meaning that very likely a person could go through his whole life and never even know that it exists, right? He knows he has obligations. He knows he has things to do. One of the things is we have to Hashem Alekecha. He has to somehow develop love to Hashem, right? But he can be totally unaware of the fact that there is already the core element of that love already exists within his own soul. Okay, hence it's called the Ava Misuteres. I was wondering, like, what's the mucker? What's the proof? Right? I was thinking because I was having some fun, comparing this to to how scientific theory works, right? Where you make an observation, and then you stipulate that there's some kind of dimension there that you cannot necessarily observe. You don't readily observe it. That's why it's only called a theory. You come up with an idea that if it would be so and so, then that would explain the observations that we are making, right? And then you do all kinds of testing and testing and testing. And if it's consistent, then it becomes, almost like accepted fact. But it's not always that way. I mean, some of the most popular theories are still called only theories, right? Like Einstein came up with the theory of relativity, or he came up with the theory of gravity. What is gravity? Gravity is curvature of space and time, right? And it's been pretty much the model that physics is using, but it's still being challenged. Though today it's being challenged, right? It's not something that you can make an absolute observation and say that that's the way it is. Okay, so if they could do it in science, we could do it as well. As a matter of fact, the difference is that it's just like kind of like it's a speculation in science, and in Yiddishkeit that's not the case. If we say that there's some hidden dimension, it's because the Torah tells us, and we accept it with our amunah that actually exists. And I was thinking, so what is Take the Makar? What is the source that a Yid has this Ava Musuteres? Where does it say that? I don't know. It seems like kind of like obvious, but don't forget, we are students of Chassidus, and we've been learning Chassidus for a long time. And Chassidus and the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov are here with us already, the 250, going on 300, almost 300 years, right? So if it kind of became like we take it for granted, it just is. And there might be, I'm not sure, I didn't have time to really look this up, but what's really where in the Torah does it say that he has Ava Mesuteres, right? There's so many anecdotal observations that allude to it, right? But is it actually something which has a source outside of Chassidus or Tanya or whatever? I'm sure there is, and Amir Hashem, we will find it. But bottom line, it's a very, very important and a very fundamental nekuda in Hasidus, especially when, in Tanya, the Abba Musateris comes up all the time. Okay. So it's the hidden dimension. Anyway, so I think I left off the Shiur that we're going to tie this in with Shavuos, okay, the hidden dimension and how it relates to the holiday of Shavuos. So before, I'm going to first give a little brief overview and how the calendar works. I'm sure Yisrael, Moshe, you probably are familiar with this, but just let's do a little review, okay? So the Jewish calendar, which by the way is the very first mitzvah, once Hashem began the process of taking us out of Mitzrayim, the very first mitzvah is that he told Moshe Rabbeinu, "Achodesh hazeh lachem," which is basically where Hashem is instructing Moshe of how the Jewish calendar is to be calculated. Okay? Now, basically all civilizations have some method of tracking time. Okay? Now, the most obvious is by making certain observations, right? Then we know every day there's a cycle, the sun comes up, the sun goes down. Okay, so there we have it. Probably every single civilization on the world counts days, right? Because everybody is making that very basic observation of the cycle of the sun in the 24-hour cycle of the sun. But then, of course, there's another cycle which everybody experiences, but we experience it over a more extended period of time, and those are the seasons. If you look a little bit more carefully up into the sky, you'll see that the seasons are basically, they are pretty much established by another observable cycle of the sun, okay? And that is the position of the sun over the 365.25 something days, where the sun is going in a full circle, a full cycle. Okay. So that's also observable. And these are basically the two natural phenomena that are observed, that are used by civilizations probably across the globe to keep track of time. As far as Yiddishkeit is concerned, from the mitzvah of Chodesh hazeh lachem, we understand that our method of tracking time is by the observation of the. Oh, I'm sorry. Whoa. Then there's a third observation. The third observation, okay, is the moon. Okay, the moon goes also through a cycle that's about 29 and a half days. So we have the lunar cycle and we have the solar cycle. And then, of course, we have the days, right? Now, the lunar cycle and the solar cycle, right? They're two independent cycles. They don't have anything really to do one with the other. They don't even mathematically coincide conveniently, right? So you don't have a nice even number of lunar cycles fitting in to the solar cycle, right? Okay. Now, back to what I started to say. Our mitzvah, if is that Hashem wants us to basically track time by the moon, okay? But we can't ignore the solar cycle. The solar cycle is also important because we have other mitzvahs that are related to seasons, right? Like Pesach, for example, Shmor is Chodesh HaAviv. That Pesach has to be in the spring. Now, if we just use lunar cycles, you know what I mean? That doesn't work. You're right. We have to use a different cycle. That is what's determining the different seasons, right? So the bottom line is that from the Torah we see that yes, we had the fundamental basis for the calendar is the months of the moon, but we also have to make sure that they coincide with the solar cycle. Okay, so that Yom Tovim fall out in the right season. So, like I said, the two cycles do not coincide nicely, right? So you do not have an exact number of lunar cycles fitting into the solar cycle. You have 12 plus 11 days approximately, right? Fitting into the seasons that's determined by the sun, okay? So what happens if you only count 12 months, right? What's going to happen is you're going to finish counting your 12 months, 11 and plus something days before the solar cycle went through its full cycle. Okay. What happens after 3 years? You basically have accumulated 11 times 3, 33 days. You're behind 33 days. So you just add one more month of 30 days, right? And in that way, you've delayed the end of the year for another 30 days, and you catch up with the solar cycle. Now, again, because it's 33 we're missing. These are all approximations, by the way. We just finished learning the Kiddush HaChodesh in the Rambam just last week. That's where this is all discussed. So you have 33 days. So 1 second, you added only 30, so you're still missing 3. So there is a system where we add sometimes the extra month every second year, not every third year. Okay. There's also, I mentioned the cycle of the days, right? The cycle of the days is also an independent cycle to the lunar cycle. So the lunar cycle is not exactly 30 days. It's actually 29 and a half days, right? You're going to have the sun come up, go down. After it does that 29 and a half days, you're going to have a new moon, right? So what do you do now? So basically, even when Hashem said "Achodesh hazeh lochem," right? He said you make that first day of the month based on when you observe the new moon. Okay. Sometimes you'll observe the new moon. It's going to be after 29 days. Now you're going to see the new moon. But most likely next month, you're not going to see it after 29 days, right? Because it's taking 29 and a half days. So that half day is going to catch up with you. And then the next month, it's going to be not until the 30th day. So even the months that Hashem told us that we should use to calculate our time and our year, right, are constantly vacillating between 29 and 30. You can't have a 29 and a half day month. A month has to be full days. Okay. All of that has a very, very practical application to the Yom Tif of Shavuos. How does that have its application to Shavuos? In a very, very practical way that affects halacha even now. Okay? So, all of the Yomim Tovim, except for Shavuos, have a designated day in the month. So Rosh Hashanah is the first day of Tishrei. So you had witnesses who came, they saw the new moon, and they established the day is going to be the first day of Tishrei. It's also going to be Rosh Hashanah. Now all you have to do is count another 10 days, and it's going to be Yom Kippur. Then count another 5 days. The 15th is going to be Sukkot. Okay, you established Rosh Chodesh, and now you know when the Yom Tovim are going to be because the Torah designates a date. Then you come to Nisan, right? We have another Yom Tov coming up. So every month was decided by observing the new moon what month it is, when the new month begins, and then same thing with Nisan. So we know the first day of Nisan, and now that we've established the first day of Nisan, on the 15th day is Pesach. When it comes to Shavuos, the Torah does not give us a date in the month. What does the Torah there say? Okay, we have a designated time for Pesach. That's the 15th of Nisan. And after the first day of Pesach, count for 50 days, and we'll count 49 days, and then the 50th day is Shavuos. So Shavuos is determined by the 15th of Nisan. That's it. The only day on the calendar that determines when Shavuos is going to be is the first day of Pesach, 15th day of Nisan. Okay. What that means is that Nisan, if it's 30 days, and then Iyar is 29 days, the Yom Tov of Shavuos is going to be on the 6th day of Sivan. But that's not necessarily absolutely the case, because, like we say, it's not a perfect cycle fitting of days fitting into the month. So it vacillates. It doesn't always vacillate exactly 29, then 30, 29, 30, because it's not exactly 29 and a half either, right? So sometimes you'll have 29 twice, and sometimes you'll have 30 twice, right? So let's look at Nisan. So we have now a set calendar. That's a whole separate thing. And now it's actually set where Nisan is 30 and Iyar is 29. And all of this was done brilliantly in the times of the Gemara, right? They basically they established a calendar, okay, and takes into account all of the different discrepancies that happen because of these cycles that don't fit one into the other. But it doesn't absolutely have to be that way, right? Because when Mashiach comes, we're going to go back not to a fixed calendar, but it's going to be a month-to-month calendar where Adam are going to come and say that they saw the new moon, right? It's going to end up to being very similar to our calendar, but it's not going to be exactly like our calendar, because when they did make that calendar, they decided that they were going to make sure that certain things don't happen. They got the word. They made sure that that Yom Kippur should never come out on a Friday or on a Sunday, right? So they had to play around with the calendar. But wherever, if they played around in one end, then they compensated for it somewhere else. Okay, so they manipulated the calendar, but they did it very carefully so that you end up at the end with everything kind of like balancing out. Okay, so now here we have the 50th day of Nisan. Nisan, not for 30 days, they didn't see, at the 30th day of Nisan comes, they didn't see the new moon, so now it's going to have 30 days, and the new moon was going to be seen the next day, which is going to be the first day of the year. Okay, our calendar, the set calendar is like that too. Comes Iyar, 29 days later, they see the new moon, and now the first day of Sivan is the next day, and then the 6th day, if you just count the days, 50 days, it's going to be the 6th of Nisan. What happens, though, if, let's say, in Nisan, they saw the moon after 29 days? So now it's not going to be a month of 30 days. The next day is going to be Rosh Chodesh Iyar. It's going to be Rosh Chodesh Iyar, okay? So you're getting to the 50th day. You're getting to it a little faster on the calendar because you skipped a day, right? So now you're going to get to the 50th day. I'm sorry, the calendar is going to be moving along now from Iyar. And then you're going to come, and then is again, Iyar is again only 29 days, right? So all of a sudden, the calendar is already now at the 7th of Sivan, and that's the 50th day from Pesach. The other way around, let's say the both months are going to be 30-day months. You have 30 and 30. And by the time you get to the 5th day of Sivan, you'll already have had 50 days. And that's going to be the Yom Tov of Shavuos, right? There's a very interesting discussion in Shulchan Aruch. The day of the giving of the Torah, was on the 6th of Sivan, right? The fact that Shavuos is on the 6th of Sivan is kind of arbitrary. It is because we have a fixed calendar, right? But it doesn't have to be the 6th of Sivan. And yet, in the davening, when the Anshei Knesset HaGedolah, when they formulated the davening, they refer to Chag HaShavuos also as Man Matan Torosenu. Every Yom Tov is referred to in the davening, which is established by the Anshei Knesset HaGedolah. So it's a very exact lashon, a very exact terminology, and we associate Pesach with Cherosenu, and we associate Shavuos with the Torah, with the giving of the Torah. But technically, Shavuos is not necessarily connected to the giving of the Torah because it doesn't even have to fall out on the day that the Torah was given. By the way, to make this whole thing even more complicated, the Gemara is also, there's different opinions as to when the Torah was given, what day of Sivan the Torah was given. But that's already it's a separate discussion. But in any case, so the bottom line is, I think the Alter Rebbe's the conclusion is that because we have a set calendar and it happens to fall out on the 6th day of Sivan, which happens to be the day which, according to the most opinions, is the day that the Torah was given, so the Achik Knesset Hagedolah decided to associate Shavuos with Matan Torah. Okay? So now that you've just been educated on how the calendar works, you realize that, okay, we're calling it Man Matan Tereseinu. Pesach is Man Tereseinu because Pesach for sure is the Yom Tif that's associated with Hashem taking us out of Mitzrayim. When Hashem gave us the Yom Tif of Pesach, he told us is that we should remember the going out of Mitzrayim. But when Hashem gave us the Yom Tov of Shavuos, he didn't tell us anything about it being associated with the giving of the Torah. And indeed, it's possible that Shavuos should be on a day different than the day of the giving of the Torah. And yet, in the davening, we do call it Zman Matan Torah. Okay? So, let me just add one more little halachic little quirk over here. That this idea that Shavuos could be on a different day, right, than the 6th day of Sivan is something that is actually halachically possible even today. Even today. Now, this whole conversation, I think maybe Rabbi Itkin, you were going to speak about it after the with Rabbi Khan. So Rabbi Khan actually had a guest for Shavuos. This goes way back, I think, in the 50s or early 60s, and he had a guest from Eretz Yisrael, and the issue came up as to whether this guest was keeping Shavuos on the right day. I'm not sure exactly what was happening. He was okay. I'll get into the general idea in a second. But and then he asked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said he will speak about it at the Farbrengen. And at the Farbrengen, the Rebbe addressed this issue. Okay. And then the Rebbe spoke about it after that, other times as well. Now, what's the issue? Okay. The 50 days that we count for Shavuos are different than any other counting. For example, we have to count 7 years and make the 7th year Shemitah. That's not an individual mitzvah. That's a mitzvah on the Bezdin. The Bezdin keeps track of years, and then they say, okay, this year is Shemitah. Okay, same thing with Yovel. The 50th year is Yovel. It's only when we have a Beis Hamikdash, but it's done by the Bezdin. Months are also, the Bezdin is calculating the months. The Bezdin has to hear the testimony that the new moon was seen, right? They establish Rosh Chodesh. They say Kodesh, Kodesh. The three members, a minimum of 3 members of the Bezdin have to hear the testimony, and they pronounce the day to be Rosh Chodesh by saying Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh 3 times. Okay. All of this is done for us. In other words, we see that in the Torah, one of the basic principles is that there is the individual, and the individual has his responsibilities. And the fact that there's also community is not just a matter of convenience, but it is integral to Torah. Because according to Torah, the individual has to keep Yom Tov, but he has to keep it on the proper day, and he's not the one who designates the day. It's the Bezdin that designates the day. So the idea that you're not alone, you can't just serve Hashem and be Mekayim, the 613 mitzvahs, as an individual, because you're performing the mitzvah, even though it's your obligation as an individual, is completely, totally, it's dependent. It hinges on what the Bezdin is going to determine as Rosh Chodesh. So it's kind of like if a Jew cannot go off and live in some isolated place and completely disconnect himself, because he won't know when he is to do the proper mitzvah. You need to be part of a bigger klal, a bigger community, right? That has in it also a bezdin and so on and so forth. Whatever, this is just a little sidebar, right? But it's going to come up again in a second, and I'll show you how. So here comes Shavuos, and you have to count 50 days. The pasuk says, "Usfartem lochem." It's not best in counting. You go to shul, you hear the Rav counts first, and then everybody counts, right? Why does everybody have to count? I don't have to count for Shemitah. I don't have to count, for anything else, right? It's similar to when a woman has to count days to determine when she can go to a mikveh. So that's a personal counting, right? Shavuos is similar to that. Shavuos, I mean, there's I think even a reference in the Zohar which compares the counting to Matan Torah as the counting that a woman counts, to know what day she can purify herself, right? I think it's in the Zohar that we say the Tikkun on the night of Shavuos. It makes what's it called? There's a correlation between the two countings. So it's a private counting, right? Now everybody's living in the same world, right? So you would think that everybody is going to end up counting their 50 days, and we're all going to end up keeping Shavuos on the same day. Except there's a problem, and the problem is there's such a thing called a dateline. Now, hopefully you're somewhat familiar with the idea of a dateline, but I'll do it in bekitzer, I'll do it in short. The dateline exists because the world happens to be round, okay? We are not flat earthers. We can't be flat earthers because the Torah has told us the world is round, okay? We knew this before Columbus discovered America. It was pretty obvious that the world is round. And being that the world is round, right? So the way the days are calculated is because you have the relationship of the earth and the sun, and it's making this full circle, right? So we observe it as being a circle around earth, right? Now every day begins when you see the sun come up, right? But it's a circle. At which point do we say that when the sun comes up, it's a new day? Right? So what we have is we have the necessity to establish a point on the circle that has no beginning, it has no end, right? You have to, so to speak, arbitrarily define a place, right? And that place is where the new day begins, right? So technically, on that spot, when the sun is observed coming up, it becomes Monday, but it has to go all the way around to bring Monday to the point just on the other side of that line, right? So the other side of the line, it's actually going to be Sunday until the sun makes its full circle and comes to that side of the line as well, right? So there's actually places in the world where you can put one foot in Monday and another foot in Sunday, okay? Now, the world also has a date line, right? They also count days, right? Now that date line is totally arbitrary. So where do they put it? They put it like it ends up being exactly opposite of the Greenwich line. So you draw a line from the North Pole to the South Pole, right? So there's what's called the Greenwich, what goes through England somewhere, right? But exactly on the other side, the line goes through the Pacific Ocean, and that line crosses the least amount of land as possible, okay? Actually, it actually wiggles around some land. Now that's an arbitrary thing because it's much more convenient to have that place where on this side it's Sunday and on this side it's Monday, right? Literally, it's like on a line, right? You put one foot on one side, another foot on the other side. It's more convenient to put it where there's the least disruption, so to speak, right? But in Torah, nothing is arbitrary. So you have a whole sugya mesechtes Rosh Hashanah as to where the date line is. It's in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. Where is the date line? Okay. And obviously, there are different opinions, right? But we have a halachic date line. We have a conclusion as to what the halacha, what we follow. There are some places where it's kind of like in between different opinions. And I remember my father once talking on the phone to somebody explaining that when they were in China during the war, So they were in a place which seemed to be right smack in the middle of the two date lines. And what they did was, like for Yom Kippur, but since Yom Kippur is Midoraisis from the Torah, I think they actually fasted 2 days or something. I'm not sure. They put tefillin on one of the days and whatever. It was a whole big whole situation. Okay, I don't know what happens today, but it's an issue. So here you have. Now, what happens if a person crosses that date line? The second you cross that date line, you either jump ahead 24 hours or you go behind 24 hours. If that happens, then if you're counting days and it's a personal mitzvah, you have to count the days that you are actually experiencing. If you didn't experience the sun come up and go down and then come up again, you can't count an extra day. So when you jump over the date line, what's going to happen is that now your experience you haven't yet experienced another day, but the people that you're amongst on the other side of that date line, like for example, you go to Australia crossing over the Pacific, right? And you land in Australia, to those people, it's a day ahead of what you've observed, right? And you can't skip a day of Sphira. You have to count your Sphira, what you observe. So you're going to count another day of Sphira, but they're going to be ahead of you. You're going to come to Ma'ariv, and your Sphira is going to be day 10, and their Sphira is going to be day 11, right? That's based on your observation, and it's your personal mitzvah, right? In reverse, you can't go the other way around. You've already had that extra day, and now you're coming to crossing the Pacific, and you land in Los Angeles, and you go to Shul for Ma'ariv, and you're ready to count already the next day, and they're still counting the day before. Okay. It's a little confusing for some people, but this is a very advanced group here, so I'm sure everybody's following along. Okay. Now, so what's going to happen though? Shavuos is based on your counting the 50 days. So if you cross the date line, you're going to have to observe Shavuos on the day that you finish counting the 50 days of the 49 days and then the 50th day for your Shavuos. This is real. This is the halacha. And this, by the way, is why if you ask a Rav, he tells you don't travel to Australia by crossing over the date line, the Pacific date line. Now, if you could go to Australia, but you have to go the other direction. By going the other direction, what happens is that while you're in the plane, it's like when you fly to Eretz Yisrael. You ever notice how the night just kind of disappears? You get on the plane, 11 o'clock at night, you're just getting ready to go fall asleep. You're just barely falling asleep, right? And then 3 hours later, or maybe even less, shachis, right? You didn't even get a chance to fall asleep. Why? Because you're going against the sun. So you accelerate the experience of the sun passing over your head, right? So you're accelerating the time, so to speak, right? Or your experience on that time. If you're basing your experience on what you're observing as far as the sun. So when you're traveling towards the sun, you're making this, and the sun is coming towards you, so you're traveling eastward, and the sun is coming from the east to the west. What's happening is that you're having an accelerated experience if when you observe the sun. So if you fly to Australia, you'll have had time to quickly daven Ma'ariv. You didn't have to wait 24 hours to daven the next Ma'ariv, but you're going to have the experience of the sunrise and the sunset accelerated, so that when you land in Australia, you will have caught up with them, and you will be, and you'll what's it called, and you'll daven Ma'ariv, and you'll be holding at the same sphere. Okay, so that's what Rabbanim will tell you to do. Rabbanim tell you, don't fly over the date line between the first day of Pesach and Shavuos unless you're going to come back before Shavuos, okay? Because you'll have lost a day, but then you'll have gained a day on your way back, okay? The Rebbe, addressed this whole issue in response, I guess, to the query of Rabbi Khan based on his guest that apparently had crossed the date line, right? And the Rebbe, like everything, the Rebbe also is going to look for the lesson in Avodas Hashem, okay? And this is where the hidden dimension of the Torah comes up. He says, it's on the one hand, we say in the davening, Zaman Matan Teirasein. This is the time that Hashem gave us the Torah. Okay. On the other hand, we know that for an individual, it's possible that his Shavuos is on a different day. So the lesson that the Rebbe learned is, okay, I'm going to explain something to you. The Ayid and the Torah are parallel. Okay. That's why, for example, we find in the Zohar, we find that in reference to the Torah, the term Gufa da'iraisa, lishmasa da'iraisa. A person has a body, a person has a soul. There's a reference of the Torah of having a guf and having a neshama. The Torah itself also has a guf and a neshama. Okay. In a sense, you could say also that just like a person has a neshama, and that neshama has within it that hidden dimension, right? The Ava Musoteres, like the Torah has the soul and it has the hidden dimension. What is that hidden dimension of the Torah? So, a Yid, every day, it says that when a child, when he begins to speak, the first thing you should teach him is a pasuk from Chumash. What's the pasuk of Chumash? Torah tziva lanu Moshe. Hashem, the Torah that Moshe has given us and that is taught to us, Moirasha Kehilas Yaakov. It's an inheritance to the congregation of Jacob, right? The Torah is being referenced as an inheritance, okay? Which is interesting because this in a Mishnah, there's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos where it seems that the Mishnah forgot this pasuk because the Mishnah says clearly exactly opposite of the pasuk. Ein a Yerushalach. It's not a Yerusha, right? And you want it. You want Torah. Don't think that you can just inherit it, right? You got to toil for it. You got to work for it, right? The basic distinction between an inheritance and something that you earn is that inheritance comes effortlessly. Right? It says that a tibik ben yoimei, if a child was born and he's 1 day old and his father passes away and he left the multi-million-dollars, the very first day of this child's life, he is a multimillionaire, right? He did nothing for it. All he did was he got born. And being that he was born, right? I mean, I guess being born is an accomplishment, but it's not so much his accomplishment, right? So here he was born, and he's a millionaire on the day he's born, because it's a Yerusha. Yerusha goes over from the father to the son effortlessly, seamlessly, just naturally, nothing required for that to happen. Everything else required. You want the boss to pay you, got to do a job. You have a contract, and he has to then give you the money, and then you have to acquire the money. Or you want to give somebody a present, same thing. You can it just automatically go. You have to give it to them, and when you give it to them, a person has to make a kinyan. He has to do something, which is an act of acquiring. Not so by Yerusha. Says the Pirkei Avos, oh, you got to toil for Torah. It's not a Yerusha, but the pasuk said it is a Yerusha. Meirasha Kehilas Yaakov. Says the Rebbe, oh, das is pshat. This is what it means. When we say, it depends which part of the Torah you're talking about. Are you talking about the Gufa da'iraisa or Nishmasa da'iraisa? What would be the difference? Alter Rebbe explains in Likutei Torah, what's the difference between the Neshama of Torah and the Guf of Torah? So the Guf of Torah is the parts of Torah that we can actually connect to on an intellectual basis. That's the study of Torah, right? And this is what Pirkei Avos is talking about. So you're not going to inherit wisdom in Torah just because your father was a Rosh Hashiva and you were born, right? And you make all the claims, of being the son of the greatest Rosh Hashiva that ever lived, right? If you don't toil, that's not going to help you at all, right? That's the guf of Torah. That's the body of Torah. The body of Torah is basically that you have to study and you have to understand. Ein a Yerushalach. It's not a Yerusha. Right? Haskin atzmoch. You have to prepare yourself and apply yourself and put in the effort And the more effort you put in, guess what? The more you'll earn. And you'll know more Torah. Okay? But here's the hidden dimension. If I don't study Torah, right? Or I don't use my full potential, right? Am I less connected to the Torah? The answer is wait, your hidden dimension is connected to that inner dimension of the Torah. And that's absolute. That's what the pasuk means, Meirosha, Yehilas Yaakov. It's an inheritance. By just the fact that you were born a Yid, on the day you were born, just like the child is now as a multimillionaire, you're even better than a multimillionaire. The day you were born as a Jew, you have the Torah. You and the Torah are like one. And that's an absolute fact, but it's a hidden dimension. When you are studying the Torah, by the way, you're not acquiring something new, you're acquiring something that's already pre-existing somewhere deep in your soul. All you're doing is every new discovery that you make in the Torah, you're bringing out something that already is an existence within your essence, and you're bringing it to the outer surface of yourself, which is in this case the process of your intellect, okay, into your consciousness when you're studying the Torah. So you have these two dimensions. You have the two dimensions in a person and the two dimensions in the Torah. The inner dimension of the Yid is intimately connected with the inner dimension of the Torah by virtue of the fact that you're a Yid. You don't have to do anything to be a Yid. You are a Yid. But obviously, you want to live like a Yid as well. That's what you are. You might as well live that, right? Because then you're going to be in peace with yourself. Like I spoke on Pesach, right? The cherus is that you're in sync with yourself. So bringing the inner to the outer is just making the whole in sync, right? Where the outer and the inner are actually in harmony one with the other, right? Likewise, the Torah, the essence of the Torah is there and it's yours, right? But then you don't want to just have it, right? What's the point? Somebody said it's like having a package with some amazing whatever. You have or you have a computer and you own it, but you never took it out of the box, right? You 100% 100% own it. If somebody stole it, they have to pay back, right? You didn't even know how to use the computer. This was somebody I once gave the shiur, and somebody's brought up this mashal. They said they have something like you got the computer, it comes in a very nice box, right? And even after you took it out and you start using it, there's so much more potential to that computer, right? That you probably will never even discover, right? That you can actually do and use that computer for, right? Very good mashal, right? Still your computer. The whole thing is yours, right? You own it, right? You haven't mastered Excel. And you didn't even know that Excel was an option on your computer. That doesn't mean that it's not yours, right? It came with Excel, so you even have Excel, right? So you, a Yid, by virtue of having been born a Yid, is connected, has the Torah. Marasha Kehilas Yaakov, he has the Torah. What is Pirkei telling you? Pirkei is telling you, listen, you are Yid. You have the Torah. You're connected to the Torah. Maybe take it out of the box and actually use it, right? That's what the Pirkei means when it says, Haskin atzmach, prepare yourself, apply yourself in order to discover what you already have within. So that's where the hidden dimension comes up in Shavuos, because in Shavuos, says the Rebbe, that's why it's possible for both Shavuos to be on the collective day, the communal day, which is the 6th day of Sivan, where everybody is keeping Shavuos, but then there's also your own personal Shavuos. The Hayom Tif of Shavuos is basically, we're celebrating the fact that we are connected to the Torah. Hashem gave us the Torah, and by virtue of the fact that we're Jewish, by Rosh Kehilas Yaakov, which interestingly is why the minhag by Chassidim in general is that we actually don't open up a Gemara the night of Shavuos. There's nothing wrong with that, obviously, right? But our minhag is that we say the tikkun. And what are we saying? We're just saying words of Torah. The first beginning of the parsha, the end of the parsha. We're not really studying anything. We're reciting words. And the reason is because by the Hasidim, we are actually emphasizing the idea that on Shavuos is the day when Hashem is giving us the Torah, that it's ours, right? It's not about mastering the Torah. That's the second thing, right? But it's already yours. Celebrate the fact that it's yours and it's embedded in your very essence. The fact, though, that Shavuos could also be on a personal day, right, where you're having a different day than everybody else, like I described before, says the Rebbe, that is to teach us that you cannot rely on the Torah just by virtue of the fact that you're part of that community. You can't say, okay, I have the Torah, and I said the whole tikkun on the Shavuos, right? But I never bothered to open up a Gemara and start learning, right? Nope, no good. Yes, it's yours, but that's like you're leaving the computer in the box. What's the point, right? So you have to have your personal connection to the Torah as well, right? Where you have to apply yourself on your level with your clever the ideas or wherever it may be, right? All valid in the study of Torah, right? Because it's a personal thing as well. And that has to be celebrated as well. And this is demonstrated by the fact that Shavuos can actually be a very, very personal Yom Tov where you're not even celebrating on the same day as everyone else. Okay? So this is the lesson that I want to share with you. And I even somehow managed to tie it into the hidden dimension as well.